let's do this one, Chris, because I did get a chance to read this. And I mentioned this in a Twitter space that I did earlier today. I was testing out that new feature on Twitter just to see what that was like. One thing that stood out to me about this article that I liked, it's just really a small part of it, but they point out this architecture of participation and how that's evolved. And I thought this was a really interesting analogy. I think it was Mark Twain specifically that said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And looking at this example, remember the movie Newsies, right? In the early 1900s, 1800s, they were people, they sat on the corner of busy intersections and sold newspapers. It was totally like a flyby situation. There was no relationship built with the subscribers. But then what happened? The Great Depression resulted in a loss in advertiser revenue. So they had to change the model and they shifted more towards subscriptions. So look at that. Is that history rhyming right now or what? I mean, we've got this depression in advertising revenue that's been going on for years because of the duopoly taking all that business away from newspapers, but then it was accelerated by COVID, and we see this increased interest in digital subscriptions. So to me, I see the exact same thing happening now. For a good part of the last 20 years, publishers really held on to the hope that digital advertising would follow them online, and they would just be able to give everything away for free, and the advertising would make up for that. But that's just not the case. Again, that market has been taken by Google and Facebook. So if we can shift more towards a membership model, whether that's free or paid, it's about building the relationship with the customer. That's just one thing I wanted to point out. I'm not even sure how key that is to this whole article. I just thought it was an interesting analogy. So
I did enjoy that part. And technically speaking of things that I thought were relevant to our publishers, I did skip down a little bit towards the right before they start mentioning the holistic strategy.
Right. Okay. Right around here.
And there's a couple of quotes here where, because they gave a little history lesson, they don't show up until 2015. And this is an education website. It's focused on education in North Carolina. So it's a statewide site trying to basically do news coverage, features, all research, all of these things from scratch. And this article is written by the editor-in-chief. So she's basically just telling her story. She says she had to learn the hard way that content distribution for search engines, social media, newsletters is different from audience growth, users and page views, which is different from engagement, being in two-way communication with the audience. So they had gone through various strategies, but when the pandemic hit, because they're an educationally focused news outlet, they were actually doing school visits and things with vaccine education and outreach and things like that, which then turned into quite a huge growth in their reach. Right. And as she mentions a little further down, I think it's below that that video there, she says in May 2020, they had a bit of a identity crisis. So they hired a strategy. They weren't sure what the focus was going to be with all this new growth. So they hired a strategist. And if you scroll down just a little bit more, I think you'll find these bullet points of the things that they wanted to examine about their process, the way their website was actually working. These are fairly familiar to us. And so I thought we could take a look a little bit of these, and then as it goes down, kind of talk a little bit about how some of these tools have been something that we found useful in helping our customers grow. I thought the need for a director of communications was interesting because I think our hometown kind of steps in to that role. For our customers. And then there are a couple of nice takeaways about how their growth has been. Even amount of traffic growth between their channels, search engine, newsletters and things. They've had some definite growth coming down. If you go a little further down, a year in is the final section. And there's some rolling average things in there. This is actually increased. And what you actually, just one more thing before I kind of turn it back to a general discussion, if you scroll right back up a little bit, is their algorithm that they designed. So if you keep scrolling back up, it's a PDF page of need, do, must do, and all that. That page. And it has some ridiculously specific technical things that they want to accomplish as a website and how to do it, from SEO to newsletter development to ad campaigns.
Nice.
All the type of things, and this is a free resource directly from their site. They say free access just to help people in the same place as them. And so I thought this was some really amazing, detailed insight into how they actually made this success story a reality.
Wow. Yeah, this is something definitely practical to take away from this. I guess I just have a quick question. Can you define in your own words, what do they mean by architecture of participation?
It seemed to shift from talking about the relationship between the paperboy and the customer,
right,
and then getting to the newspapers and now this digital thing. And it seemed to, once they started revamping, the participation seemed to be much more about an internal staff structure that they wanted to focus on and find a way of bridging communication between the entire staff for what they call that holistic strategy, which then I guess allows them to, as they say, they have 5 p.m. call meetings each day to discuss content and audience. So I know they're doing audience outreach, newsletters, surveys, and things like that. So there may be kind of a twofold participation, but what I think their initial usage of that term was the way that they felt that they needed to rework their quote unquote staff and editorial and managerial structure in order to take a step up from where they had plateaued in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah. So holistic strategy, I guess to boil this down, you really do need to have these 3 hats that you can just swap in and out. And these are just concrete goals that a lot of publishers are used to thinking about. When a publisher launches a news website, are they thinking about growing and engagement as distinct things? Because I'm not sure they are. And I think that may be part of the problem, because they are very different goals, and you have to go about them in different ways. I mean, we talk about this today in news tech. I mean, we've got distribution down, we've got our workflow process down. That's different than the engagement with the audience, which is also good. The growth, we want to see more growth. That's really a separate thing from the engagement. We get engagement on everything we put out there, and sometimes it's even from the original author of the article. So that's great, but is that really converting to numbers, I guess, is the question.
The other thing is they needed to take a look at each one of these tasks, see what the tools were, and also judge how much it cost to implement these things versus the return on investment that you may or may not be getting, or also judging how long a return on investment might take, depending on some of the longer term strategies. But each of these bullet points is actually a subsection in that task list. So they have a whole series of tasks related to each one of these bullet points and how they want to achieve them.
So they've got these different tiers. The types of things that are in the top tier are basic SEO on all articles, looking at the analytics on a weekly basis to then interpret and apply in terms of what type of content you're going to cover in the future. I think this first page is a great place to start. Then they've got a lot of nice to haves in here, which would be definitely lower priority, but
they've even got things like quarterly webinars, which is something that we've done at our hometown. So there's a lot of things that I found that made them successful, that drew parallels to some of the things that we've been finding that have been working nicely for just increasing our reach and engagement.
And I can see a whole follow-up on this, Chris. This is great for our hometown audience. But this was just a cool story because it's such a focused news organization, just education in North Carolina. It's super focused, but also a very large potential audience there. I mean, even outside of North Carolina, just to see what's going on, if you're just in education, to follow a site like this.
They're at 2021, they were at 2 million page views. And one of the strategies down in their list, of course, on their wish list, is to get full 100 county coverage.
Let's just rapid fire go through these points here. In terms of the website, that's something that we handle for our customers completely. So just the management of the website and optimizing for search engines and everything. Email, including newsletters, that's built into the platform. Specifically with full service, it'll automatically go out after you send us the files, but we can also automate it for self-service. Social media, again, you could break this topic up in much more detail as they do on the spreadsheet, but we've got social media auto posts to just make sure you're getting everything out there in the cheapest, most efficient way possible.
This next one, Reach, is that's their in-house design tool. So I'm not sure exactly what it does, but I think it looks like maybe handles gravity forms and some things like that for
surveys,
polls.
Coming in text form. Yep, definitely something we want to look into. Then we've got fostering belonging. So donations and memberships. Okay, definitely we're well into the membership space, and donations are always a good option to offer on the site. There's really no reason to not have that there in case a current subscriber wants to give more. Events. I think this is something that newspapers could really do a lot more on. I know that they've got a lot going on, but I just think that it would be a pretty natural thing for them to do because they know the events going on in the first place, just to get a little bit more involved and partner up with these organizers. This is something that we are very focused on. We're doing monthly webinars now, and we're bringing in experts, professional speakers. So there's a whole business that we're trying to build behind this, where all of our customers would attend for free, but we also want to offer this to anyone in the industry at a minimum cost. So then we've got brand building, swag, and sponsorships. What would that look like for a local newspaper?
You could offer a local newspaper tote at the baseball game.
Sure, absolutely. Just get the name out there.
For a fairly low investment of a few $100s to give them away to the first 100 patrons.
Right.
Somebody's going to be using that at the grocery store. It's got a website, it's got your logo, and that's got some people thinking about you.
And I can kind of picture that.
Bumper stickers.
Yeah.
I support local journalism.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and that's what our most PBS stations do is with a donation, you get a little bit of swag to show that you did that.
Absolutely. So yeah, maybe swag for subscribers. I follow a lot of our customers on Facebook, and we see a lot more people going to basketball games, football games, and just filming them live, either streaming them through Facebook or YouTube. But the point is they're already at the game. Just to set up more of a presence there, I think would make sense. If you could just carve out a little section for yourself, bring like a table from where you got your camera set up and have the swag right there and just be in the community.
Swag doesn't even have to cost anything or very little to a publisher, because a lot of times you get bigger companies, like maybe your local grocery store or something. They will give you stuff in exchange for maybe a free ad spot. And it's a write-off for them for their taxes as a donation. So swag is a good, I really like this, and it doesn't have to cost.
Yeah, you go to the advertiser and say, give me a sample of these to give away at the game. We'll be at the game. We'll give it away. We'll do this cross promotion with the newspaper. And again, like this stuff, you got to think about the time investment in these things. But if you're already going to the game and you're already covering these things because you need to, even if you're not filming it, just covering it for the paper, just putting in the extra effort to just leave more of an impression, I guess. Offering content to other outlets and platforms. And this reminds me of something, just talking about partnering with other bloggers in the area, giving them a platform to speak, but also then getting content from them and coming up with a freelance arrangement.
That plays into SEO too.
Absolutely, because they've got a presence elsewhere. And now they're appearing on your site and linking back to theirs and back and forth. And they've got a Twitter presence. I mean, I would look to Twitter. That's kind of where I think people that are just natural born journalists, even if that's not the career they pursue, that's the platform they love. And they'll be, very active on there. Okay, very cool. This was a pretty high level one, lots of information in it. So we'll try to break that down a little bit more for our hometown customers. Today in News Tech, the podcast covering innovation in digital journalism. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and subscribe on YouTube or any of your favorite podcast apps. We'll see you tomorrow.
At our hometown, we help newspapers build WordPress websites, design native apps, and develop digital subscription models. If you are interested in a free prototype of your publication on WordPress, go to ourhometown.com and click the Contact Us button.